Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. This is Ukraine War News Update, first part thereof for the 30th of October 2024. Sorry if I'm a little bit jaded today. I was at a pub with some mates doing the usual politics and philosophy, banging on for hours and hours as we do when we meet these days, and we put the world bang to rights last night. And yes, I'm a little bit jaded, although let's have a look. Yeah, no, it turns out the world is still a bag of shite. So, didn't make any difference. Right, let's look at the Ukrainian General Staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course, and my goodness, there are still some high numbers. Incredibly high numbers of personnel loss. In fact, this is a record-breaking month. I've talked about 7-day rolling average, a 30-day rolling average. This month of October will go down as the worst of the war in terms of Russian personnel losses. 8 tanks is pretty high. That's almost on the nose of the daily average. 29 armoured personnel vehicles above the daily average. 38 artillery systems, almost double the daily average. 1 multiple launch rocket system, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Haven't seen those on the list for some time, actually. 91 vehicles and fuel tanks, and my goodness, that is a high number there. 1 piece of special equipment. So some staggeringly high losses. Let's look at Dell's data sheet. Remember, this is on linked to in the description every day that I do these videos, and we can see heavy loss there in personnel, heavy loss in terms of vehicles and fuel tanks. Let's look at the daily or the 7-day and 30-day rolling averages, and we see record in personnel lost. We also see a record here in terms of vehicles and fuel tanks with a 30-day, not a 7-day rolling average, but a 30-day rolling average record high for vehicles and fuel tanks. And I think that signifies that the Russians are really attacking everywhere they possibly can, taking horrendous losses, but also making some pretty decent gains on the map. They are losing people, they are losing equipment, although tanks and APVs aren't the highest that we've seen them in terms of those averages. So we look at the tanks, the rolling average and 7-day and 30-day rolling averages are way higher than what we are seeing this at the moment. And likewise, let's have a look for the APVs. Close on the 30-day rolling average, but generally lower at the moment. And my feeling, like I've said to you before, is that they are heavily relying on other vehicles. I've saw some more footage this morning of an attack using golf buggies, where they're using golf buggies to attack a tree line. They dismount. It's exactly what you would normally use an infantry fighting vehicle or an APC for. Humvees, we've seen the Ukrainians at the beginning of the war use a bunch of Humvees, or M113s, even older vehicles. You've seen a number of those. You drop your troops off and then you get out of dodge. The Russians are using golf buggies. So when you're seeing 91 vehicles lost here, and I'm saying that's really high, and we've got really high personnel losses, but although it's above average in terms of APVs, it is way below what we've seen. That is because APVs are being replaced with these other vehicles. I'm certain of it. And that makes sense of the data, I think, as a theory. So let's look at the loss list from Andrew Perpetua. This is from yesterday, so it refers to kind of 2 days ago. There's not one out yet. We see about 1.5 to 1. And actually, if you take all of these pink ones out as surveillance and comms equipment, which is often pieces of equipment like Starlinks, much less valuable, but still interesting to know. But for our purposes, I think you can take them out. And then actually the stats are more like a 2 to 1 loss, Russian to Ukrainian loss. And in terms of combat asset losses, so artillery, tanks, APVs, then I think you are AFVs, armored fighting vehicles, sorry, then you are looking at almost a 2 to 1 loss ratio. Okay, let's look at the Ukrainian losses here, see if there's anything we can derive interesting. Okay, so yep, we have a boat, a couple of bits of artillery, but it's a Leopard 1A5. Is that the first Leopard 1A5 we've seen destroyed? Unknown cause there, but interesting. We've got a Bradley destroyed as well. And then in the APCs, got about half dozen of them, and they are all Western provided vehicles. M113 Humvee, Striker, Senator. A couple of MRAPs thrown in as well. Destroyed to damaged ratio is all right, not too bad. IFVs, 3/4 of those destroyed, but APCs less than half destroyed. So although the MRAPs there both taken out irretrievably. Okay, and then when we go up to the Russian losses, we have an air defense system, a Tor M1, that was destroyed by a Switchblade 600. I showed you that video the other day, or referenced it. I showed you some stills from it. We have, in artillery terms, some very old bits of kit. Only 3 here, but one of them's an M46. Again, 1946 designed howitzer. We are starting to see more and more of these really old, and that's we've now taken for granted that there are D20s and D30s on there that are super old anyway. Just incredible that what the Russians are utilizing in this war, and it goes to show that they have absolutely chomped through their stockpiles of decent artillery. They are using the oldest of the old. Tanks, there's about a dozen tanks here, quite a big list. Most of them abandoned and destroyed. Bit of a variety, a couple of track garden sheds, T-72s, and then a lot of unknown ones. Infantry fighting vehicles, about 10 of those, most of those destroyed and abandoned. BMP 1s, 2s, 3s, BTRs, all the usual culprits there. APCs and an AFV, a number of those, not too many trucks. And then we're down to motorcycles, pickups, actually no golf buggies today, but these sort of vehicles that I think will be being used for attacks, as I've been saying. But this is 2 days ago, so it'll be interesting to see what Andrew's next one is, whether we see many other kind of ATVs, all-terrain vehicles thrown in there, quads and golf buggies that we often see. Interestingly, none there today. Okay, so that's the loss list from a couple of days ago. Now let's go on to look at a few other sources. Kiev Independent refers to the Mediat Zona. That's the BBC Russia Mediat Zona project where they're looking at the deaths of Russian troops. Now these will not include LPR and DPR. So the Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republic forces, the militias that are based in the east, they are not included in these statistics, and they have a very tight tight set of criteria for qualifying to be added to this ledger. So when they're looking on social media or public announcements of deaths, it had to be absolutely connected to the war. So if you're pretty sure that this person was in the war and they've announced their funeral or whatever, if it's not formally stated that they died in the war, then they discount that. So this is an absolute benchmark minimum, and it's just what can be found on social media and etc. etc. So to have found 75,000 confirmed deaths, then when you start looking at the 600, we're almost at 793,000. So this is over 10% of that, and this number here includes wounded, dead, wounded, prisoner of war, and deserted. Let's assume, if we doubled that to say 150,000, then what I'm trying to say is this broadly can fit in line with the general staff figures there. Like this, there are certain categories that you need to add onto this. Like I said, LPR, DPR, and so on and so forth. So through open source research, Mediazona, a Russian independent media outlet, together with BBC Russia, have confirmed the names of 75,382 Russian soldiers who have been killed since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion. And of course, it won't include foreign mercenaries and as well as a category. Now, this is pretty interesting here, coming from envy.ua. Null Report says robotic units have helped reduce Ukrainian military casualties by 30%. According to the General Staff source, modelling by the Central Research Institute confirms these systems' effectiveness on the front lines. So here we have UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles. Sometimes you see these listed on Andrew Perpetua's loss list. I don't think we've got any today, no. So none on there today, but often marked on there, and they are, I would assume, using these more and more. They have given licensing permission for a whole host of different drones. 200 odd drones the Ukrainians are making, 200 different models of drones. Of course, that's aerial, ground and sea, or surface drones. But yeah, we're seeing more and more of this kind of setup, and I think that is very interesting, because if they are saving lives, then you will see this more and more, and science fiction becomes science fact, and we start entering into the world of Terminator, so on and so forth. Okay, just in case you were in any doubt who the bad guys were in this, the Russians have no more shyness or hesitation and publish a video of a Russian drone hitting a residential building in Kherson. According to United 24, the Russians are showing the whole world that they hunt and kill civilians. They can do this because the West has shown nothing but weakness for 32 months, says Jürgen Naudit. They are very open now with what they spread on social media. They do not care one jot about, committing war crimes and shouting about them. Now, this isn't a loss in terms of the war in Ukraine, but I think we can derive some interesting conclusions from this. And I talked about this the other day. This is a Wall Street Journal article saying Israel's strike on Iran also hit Russian arms industry's once strong image. Destruction of Iran's anti-missile systems supplied by Moscow follows Ukraine's hits on more advanced Russian defences. So basically, Israel supposedly destroyed all the S-300 air defence systems in Iran, possibly S-400s as well, is a rumour, which was central to its defences, according to Wall Street Journal. 3 of the 4 systems supplied by Russia were reportedly hit on October the 26th, and the last one destroyed earlier. The point is that, the Russians claim that their systems are pretty good, are good systems, and they can do X, Y, and Z. We've seen this with the S-400, and yet they get taken out relatively easily in Ukraine. Well, we're seeing this in Iran as well, where they've got these S-300 systems, and the Israeli jets have just absolutely taken them out and not been shot down themselves. So in a competition between Israeli jets and Russian air defences, Israeli jets win. So how good are the Russian air defences? Well, the evidence at the moment is showing that the Russian air defences are quite possibly somewhat overhyped, and they aren't as good as they were claiming they were. And I think this war in general is showing the reality of Russia is very, very different to the perception, where they were the second greatest army in the world, and the West was afraid of Russia. And actually, they've been shown to be a bit of a kind of Potemkin village, a sort of a paper bear, if you like. And yet, we're at a time now where the West is starting to go, is it Duda, the Polish president, said, we can't continue supporting Ukraine at the rate we have been. And, people are starting to get cold feet. You're like, no, this is the time to turn the screw. This is absolutely the time to whack it up to 11 and go for it, But, yeah, it's frustrating. Bit of Spinal Tap reference there. During the night, Russia hit Sumy with a missile, as well as launching 62 drones into Ukraine. So of those 62 drones, 33 were intercepted, 25 brought down by electronic warfare, and one went back to Russia. So that is 59 out of 62. So that leaves 3 drones to have possibly hit their target. Pretty good rates. But what goes up must come down. And of course, most of those drones will be causing some kind of damage. Elena Halushka here saying this part of rubble used to be someone's home in Kharkiv. Now it's their grave, all because new rules of global interaction are written right now, which secure that terrorism by a nuclear state is untouchable, unpunishable, and worthy of an extra tribute visit by the UN boss. So some anger here from Ukrainians and supporters of Ukraine at the West's, or particularly the US's, reluctance to allow Ukraine to properly defend themselves. And this results very explicitly in the deaths of Ukrainians. There seems to be this annoying period. My goodness, I can't wait till the election is over in America, because hopefully the right side win for Ukraine and some decisions can start to be made. Because at the moment, I think there's a paralysis taking place, and it's insanely frustrating. Right, Russia says that Zheleznogorsk in Kursk region is under attack. Some called it fire from the sky as drones arrived. So yeah, this is the fires may have been started by air defense knocking down drones. So possibly some drone activity in Kursk by the Ukrainians, some fires being caused, but yeah, don't know whether that was a strike from the drones or the drones being shot down. But no real other news of Ukraine. I'm wondering whether Ukraine is going to just release the Kraken. No, I think there's going to be a massive attack at some point. Going every time I say massive attack, I just think Bristol Trip Hop. Another music reference there. Anyway, the lack of wide-scale Ukrainian drone attacks or missile attacks into Russia, I think indicates that they are stockpiling and getting ready for a big old wave into Russia at some point. So I'd expect that in the next couple of nights. Now, there are talks, I do have that here. There are talks there are rumours, that Ukraine and Russia are in talks at the moment about not striking each other's energy infrastructure. This could be quite a clever move from Ukraine, which is we saw them, and I did do some commentary on this, saying it's interesting. They've moved away from not striking energy infrastructure in Russia, like power stations. They were previously doing, say, oil refineries and this and that, to hitting power stations a couple of times and substations. And I was like, that's interesting, and this could be their way of defending their own energy infrastructure. So we start hitting power stations and then go to Russia and say, by the way, we can continue to hit power stations. How do you like them apples? You've been doing that to us. We can do that to you. So how about we have a little gentleman's agreement here, between a gentleman and a horrific dictator. How about we have this agreement where you don't strike our energy infrastructure and we don't strike yours? And so I don't know whether this includes hydrocarbons or not. I would have thought Ukraine would want to keep hitting the hydrocarbon facilities, your refineries and depots, but it's about the power plants, because Ukraine is on a knife edge with regard to being able to last out the winter. So that could be a sensible move by the Ukrainians there. And then we hear that the Ukrainians have already struck, or at least El País in Spain has reported that the Ukrainians have already struck several buildings where servicemen from North Korea were stationed. So yeah, we have heard that maybe 3,000 odd North Koreans are in Kursk already. Whether this is outside of Kursk, further away, or in the Kursk area, I don't know. It's a bit vague. Now, we are seeing some big problems on the eastern front and the southern front in the eastern corner, so by Vuhledar. Emil Kastelheimy here has a good analysis of what's going on. The Russians recently launched a large offensive in eastern and southern Donetsk on a 70-kilometer wide front. The attack has breached Ukrainian defenses in just a few days in many areas, and there can be some dangerous developments ahead, which I'll discuss in this thread. So I will leave that till my frontline update later, but just to let you know that it is really challenging for the Ukrainians. Things are not looking good on the battlefield in a number of places, although weirdly they're sort of counter-attacking Turets and doing quite well there still, I think. But in general terms, the Russians are really mounting an awful lot of pressure on the Ukrainians. And they claim here Russia's gathered 200,000 troops in the south of Ukraine, according to the Defense Forces of Southern Ukraine spokesperson. Quote, these forces include the occupying forces in Crimea. At the same time, there is no formation of offensive groups, he added. So I'm not quite sure, the point sometimes of these claims, which is there are 200,000 troops there. Oh, we need to be worried. And then it's but actually, most of those are not offensive troops. They are, as in, it's not a bunch of units brought together ready for an attack. These are the troops that they have positioned in Crimea. It will include mechanics, logistics, all sorts of people. It's like they kept on saying up in Luhansk, if you remember, there are 120,000 Russian troops up there. And of course, the reality is probably only 20,000 of those were combat offensive troops. I wonder what the situation is here. There have been talks that the Russians are getting ready for an attack in Zaporizhia, and it could just be that this is all part of that sort of Donetsk. You've got Zaporizhia slightly to the left of this map. So this is Donetsk, and it sort of ends there, halfway through the Velika Novosilka sector there. And the Zaporizhia is over here, but it certainly, this southern front line. There are lots of challenges for the Ukrainians there. Right, Pentagon spokesperson Pat Ryder has said that a relatively small number of North Korean troops are already in Kursk, as I mentioned earlier. President Joe Biden said that Kyiv should strike back at North Korean troops if they go into Ukraine. It's a bit of a nothing burger for me. Of course they should strike back at North Korean troops if they go into Ukraine. Just welcome them in and offer them dinner. But anyway, lots of people talking about this. US President Joe Biden said Ukraine should strike back if North Korean troops crossed into Ukraine, adding he was concerned by the presence of those troops in Kursk. This causes me concern, he said. No shit, Sherlock. I think you need something a little bit stronger than that, and I think you need to give permission to the Ukrainians to do an awful lot more than is presently the case. In terms of Russia's ability to prosecute this war, they are receiving an awful lot of money, and a lot of this money is coming from the usual suspects. China, India, and Turkey, for example, have funded the war through the fossil fuel acquisitions they made. So China bought the most Russian fossil fuels during a full-scale war. India is second place, followed by Turkey. Fourth position with a significant margin is occupied by the EU country Germany. However, if the entire EU is taken together, it would rank second with a share of 26.5% of all Russian energy exports. Now, before we all have a go at the EU and Germany, in particular, Germany has been weaning themselves off Russian hydrocarbons. The war started, you can't turn off those pipes and incoming oil imports like that, because you suddenly have no energy for your country and your country stops functioning. And so in order to get a handle on weaning yourself off Russian hydrocarbons while also contending with inflation and making sure that your economy isn't hammered by inflation because you're having to get those hydrocarbons from somewhere else or energy from somewhere else, and that will invariably be at a higher price, these things take time. So the question is, how much were Germany and the EU importing from Russia in terms of hydrocarbons before the war, and how much are they importing now? And is that a trajectory that is continuing or will continue to go down? And if it's not going to go down, then goodness me, we need to do something about it. But question everything, etc., etc. Okay, and just finally here, billionaire Howard Buffett. I've talked about the Buffett, so he's Warren Buffett's son. I've talked about a number of these billionaire philanthropists. You get certain billionaires that get to a point in their life where they're like, oh, turns out I've got more money than I can poke a hairy stick at. So what am I going to do with it? Let's have a moment of self-actualization and get to the top of Maslow's hierarchy. I've climbed this pyramid. Now what am I doing? And most decent people who are billionaires, those people may be accidental billionaires. Someone like Bill Gates probably started off life as a decent human being and then became almost accidentally a billionaire, like right place, right time, right product. They're more likely to get to that point and go, okay, let's do something positive, rather than those sociopathic people like Rupert Murdoch, Donald Trump, those people that get there and just like, I want more, I want more, I want more, the continual conveyor belt of wanting more, and don't sit to go, how do I make the world a better place? I've got all the money and power I need. How do I then put this to good use? So there are certain people that go in that direction, and there are other people that don't go in that direction, and some people, sort of Richard Branson, somewhere in the middle maybe. But Howard Buffett certainly putting his father's fortune to good use. They put an absolute bunch of money, like literally hundreds and hundreds of millions, into Ukraine. In fact, I think they supported Ukraine to a tune higher than some countries have. Buffett and indeed George Soros, his foundations as well, have done similar. Although if you're on the right of the political spectrum in the US, you will hate George Soros. But actually, if you look at what he's done for Ukraine, it's really impressive. Howard Buffett as well arrived in Kharkiv. The American philanthropist has been photographing Russian arrivals for 3 days now, as in the bombs coming in. The Buffett Foundation is providing significant assistance to the Kharkiv region, in particular with children's kitchens, DNA laboratories, and other equipment for the police. Really great stuff, and long may we need to sing the praises of people who do the right things. rather than whinge all the time that people don't. Let's just, lift some people up and say thank you for doing that. You didn't need to. You're spending it in the right place. Good. Thank you. Anyway, that's enough from me. I really appreciate your support. Just one final thing. It's Halloween, isn't it? And I normally carve a pumpkin. I didn't last year. My hands, with MS, I can't feel my hands, and things become very difficult. But let's look through some pumpkins that I've carved previously and marvel over my, no doubt, inept attempts to get into the spirit. Oh, look, there's a witch on a broom. Well, look, there's a vomiting. I like that one. Vomiting out all that gubbins there. Just a pretty standard one there. There he is vomiting out. I like that. Oh, look, using the end as a nose. And a bit of hair on that one as well. Yeah, nice. One-eyed one there with some rounded teeth. I like that one. And one with a funny old mouth going on to the side there. Oh, a skeleton. And look, a cat and a bat and kind of Nightmare at Christmas type look from that one, or whatever it is. Yeah, so there you go. Toothpicks in that one. That was good. I like that one. And different. It's going to be exciting. So I'm thinking about doing one today, and on the back of it, maybe having the trident from the Ukrainian trident. And spider there. I quite like that one. That's pretty cool. Lots of different ones here. There you go. Anyway, time to get on with some carving of pumpkins and see what... Oh, that was pretty cool. Oh, I like that one. And see whether I still have any ability to to be creative. Anyway, take care, guys. Happy Halloween when it comes, and I will speak to you soon.